So we really span a lot of geographical areas here with a kind of center base in the Swiss amongst each other again here, you see, the Swiss community on my right and the gentleman from Russia and over to the... Well, let's kick it off. What we have to cover is so broad, we could talk for over 3 days. That's impossible. So we will end in time at exactly in 1 hour. Gentlemen, I would like to start, Ralf, if you would, with you. What brought you here? Not here today, but what brought you to be in this blockchain business? Why are you fascinated about it, and where do you see it going, to kick it off?
Thank you, Peter. What brought me here? An accident, because I'm working and living in the heart of the crypto valley, and we're running a business center there, just by accident too, because for our companies and for our ventures. And one day we had the first blockchain company there asking, are there other blockchain companies? And we said, of course. And we had to learn what blockchain is. And now we have 80 blockchain companies at our 2 locations in Zug.
Within what period of time?
2.5 years.
80 companies within 2.5 years.
And 70 of these companies in the last year.
Is that a hype?
It's a hype,
okay.
Absolutely. Are there a lot of people over there for every company? No, unfortunately not in the moment.
Yeah.
And we try to get more people there.
Excellent. Okay. Nicolai, you're also based in Zug, of course, so maybe you can complement to this fantastic growth situation. And also, if you would have a critical view on this, what is still not working so well when you think of projects, or what could be improved?
So yes, it has been an incredible experience to see the development of Zug. We, from the side of Bitcoin Swiss, has been there since 2013 actually.
Okay.
And we have seen massive amount of companies being created in Zug. And I agree with Ralf that not many people are there yet. But I would say the great development within the last half year is actually that a lot of the mailboxes are being replaced by offices and by people coming to Zug. The downside of Zug at the moment is the lack of hotels, actually, in order to,
infrastructure
to fill the needs of this growing industry. So yeah, overall massive explosion in development.
And is it also that you just have, because Zug is known for a very good administration and support in that respect for companies, in particular foreign companies who seek a Swiss headquarter. So this friendly administration, now you mentioned the infrastructure is not quite coping up with it. What about the developers? Do we attract tech talents into Zug Crypto Valley yet? Or is it more the front of the companies that we see?
I would say it's still more of the front of the companies, simply also due to the fact of Switzerland being an extremely wealthy country. That means that salaries are high and the expenses are high. And as a startup company and as a developer company, that is quite a challenge to face in order to create some revenue and create some profit, which allows you to be based in Zug and in Switzerland and be operational there without outsourcing the development of what you're actually building.
Excellent. Okay, wonderful. Marc, we know each other for many years already, but we didn't see each other so much because you're so busy. And now a fantastic opportunity to see you again. I understand you also run investments into blockchain-based companies out of Zug, and how do you see this whole area developing, creating jobs, creating companies, creating wealth? We heard that in the last panel, incredibly amounts of money being attracted, and how is it, so to say, transforming into real value generation and real growth?
Yeah, good morning everybody. Nice to be here and see each other again. I'm originally a tech entrepreneur. I founded my first tech company in 1999. And I was always fascinated by technologies which are a little bit ahead of the curve. So I jumped into the whole crypto Bitcoin space in 2012 and saw the whole development from the early days. And because I'm based here, like Ralf also said, by accident, you're now also in the middle of this whole crypto valley frenziness. And I think it's interesting to see. I'm quite often in Berlin, literally every 2 weeks. And I think we have now the huge opportunity here in Switzerland that we really are completely ahead of the curve. And I think that's something I never saw before. Honestly, I also never saw an industry exploding in a manner like we see it at the moment here in the crypto space. And as we already heard also from you, Nicolai, I mean, 2-3 years ago, they were mainly leather boxes, and now the talent, the investors, the whole ecosystem is following, especially because we have very ambitious initiatives like the ones where Ralf is involved. And I think, yeah, when you look at Berlin 15 years ago, there was also a similar setup, and I hope that we will see much more substance in the area here evolving.
Of course, Berlin has more and cheaper hotels than Zug.
That helps, yeah. But I would say 20 years ago, it was also different.
No, I guess we have some more mics over here, but that's fine. So, yeah, opening the scope a little bit from the Swiss focus that we had. Of course, this is all international, but now maybe over to Russia. We have heard this opening video message from Russia, which was contained some very interesting aspects, including that freezing bank accounts in other countries, in particular in North America, with blockchain would no longer be possible. In our preparation call, we also spoke about the dark side of blockchain and how it could be abused. You gave a wonderful example. Maybe you want to talk about that as well.
So, hello, everyone. Does it work? Sure. Okay. Can anyone hear me? Sorry. Thanks.
I think it's fine.
So basically, the current consensus in Russia is that people are looking for ways to have their capital in a safe jurisdiction and have a passport in different jurisdiction, because you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
And given the current political situation in our country, even if you invest your money into the public stocks, you still invest into the government.
Right.
So the huge upturn in terms of ICO funding is a result of such actions, and can see as a revolt against the current regime. So people who want to be entrepreneurial, they start their own startups and they raise their funds through ICOs because of the huge involvement of red tape. And I think that's an issue with all developing countries nowadays. From the other side, my background is I spent 5 years in commercial finance and doing private banking. Ironic as it seems in a Swiss bank. And from what I heard as well, people start to adopt blockchain technology there, start to look into that direction. But then the most challenging question is, how do you prove the source of income? From what I've heard, people say, oh, we'll deal with trusted exchanges. How is that so? Right. Like if the money comes from a first hand, if you deposit fiat money and in exchange for like tokens and you deposit tokens, then maybe you can prove the source of income. But then when you get in some sort of deposit from other wallet, from where you don't know where the money is coming from, whereas the guarantee is not like you find like it's not like legal.
Basically, we heard before that the intention of blockchain would be to avoid money laundering, but actually now some of the currencies in the cryptocurrencies are being used for exactly that.
Definitely, most definitely. I will see it more and more wide open. That's the dark side of the blockchain nowadays. So it's challenging to prove, because you know, like a blockchain transaction, you can see where the money is coming from, and like it's public available, so everybody can witness it. Right. But you don't know who's the ultimate holder of this ultimate wallet. So how are you going to prove it? Even though we're claiming it's a bit more transparent, in reality it's not. And that's the issue that needs to be tackled.
Yeah. Wonderful. Dan, thank you. You had probably the longest journey over from San Francisco 2 days ago. We were still on the phone, and thank you for being here, especially. How's the American perspective on this? I think we spoke also a little bit about activities in the US. Maybe you want to share some of your knowledge. In particular, I would be interested in hearing about also the regulatory aspects that are recently being undertaken by SEC, for example.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for the opportunity to visit this beautiful country. My first time here. So I joined Coinbase.
True. We have to give you a good time.
Oh, yes. No, I'm going to have to come back. I'm not going to have enough time to do the skiing that I was hoping to do. So I joined Coinbase in 2013. Prior to that, I was at a real estate company. And while I was there, I read an article about Bitcoin. And I read it in the context of the Silk Road. It was pretty much the primary use case back in 2012. And I wasn't terribly interested in it for that reason. But when I read this article in early 2013, it made me realize that the technology existed beyond the Silk Road and that there was actually something tangible there. And so I did the veritable rabbit hole, went down the rabbit hole, and really discovered that this was something I really wanted to get into. And it really first clicked when I did a small transaction on a website that no longer exists anymore. I sent some Bitcoin, and I bought a small item, and it arrived in the mail. And I said, okay, here's something that I need to pay attention to. Doing a transaction over the internet without any banking credentials or any middleman besides the Bitcoin network. When I came in 2013, the primary U.S. regulator at the time was FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And it's still very much heavily involved in the game. But we're starting to see now sort of a wrestling match between a number of different regulatory agencies in the US, which would be FinCEN, the SEC, and the CFTB. These are three different regulatory agencies that have three different perspectives on what Bitcoin and these different crypto assets are. SEC is starting to become really more interested since the ICO space came in. They've come out with pretty clear statements saying that some of these ICOs resemble and are in fact securities, and they need to be registered and behave accordingly. We saw very recently, an emergency action from the SEC to freeze the assets of an ICO called PlexCoin, which is actually based in Canada. So we can see that the SEC actually has quite long arms when it comes to this. Even more recently than that, FinCEN came out with quite a surprising guidance statement recently, saying that the developers, in fact, of ICOs are to be considered money transmitters, MSBs, if they deal with U.S. citizens, which means they have to go through the same licensing process that Coinbase did, and I can tell you that's not a cheap or quick process. So that's where we are right now.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that it's really very interesting to compare about the various activities in the different jurisdictions. And we heard that Switzerland claims to be very leading. Of course, we also see countries like Estonia with their e-governance initiatives based on blockchain in part. Very interesting. I personally have been to Kazakhstan lately, attending a big conference with a digital agenda, is clearly stating that they want to make the transformation to a knowledge-based society based on blockchain technology. I had the pleasure to attend a conference in Oman. We spoke about it briefly. You were partly involved with one of your partners to organize that. And so we see there's a lot of activities. My next question would be, how difficult is it to have individual country-based regulation when we talk about global transactions within blockchain? And how much do you guys see a need to harmonize these? Or would it be a benefit for small countries like Switzerland, Liechtenstein, to be ahead of the curve and be most flexible in regulations, with the potential danger that some other guys, larger countries who are potentially slower, would attack you for being a haven again? Anyone? Ralf. Very good.
First of all, Switzerland is very active in regulating what we are doing now, and we are happy to to lead the blockchain task force on a governmental level, and your contact or you're in it, Marc. And we are also happy that we have on a cantonal level, like Matthias Michel, people who are staying behind the topic and saying, hey, there's growing something big, there's a risk, yes, but there are opportunities. Yeah. But yes, regulation is needed. I would say this industry is silly in the moment. We are throwing 100 million to a team with no clue and believe that they will do a good project. There's a reason that the venture capital industry has a step-by-step financing model, that there's seed, that there's early stage investments, that there's Series A, Series B, Series C. You never will get a Series C with a paper. But in the blockchain space, that's possible, and you can get 100 or probably 200 million, and that means we are crazy here, all in the room, or probably most of us. And I think we will see more serious steps in financing in the future, and regulation will help on that. And what is Switzerland on that? Are we changing laws super fast? No, we're not. Definitively. We're slow, but reliable. And this reliable is the most important thing in the business world. That's the reason why Switzerland is internationally so successful, because when we do something here, usually not the government is coming and say, hey, that's forbidden since 10 years. That's the US government what is doing this. But in Switzerland, probably you get warned and they say, hey, beginning of 2019, we will change this. Please be serious on that, what you are doing. And that's a thing what I like here in Switzerland.
Very good points. Nicolai, please.
But yes, in my point of view, we are definitely going to face some challenges when it comes to regulations, and we are facing the need of actually creating a legal framework which also works abroad, across borders.
Right.
I would not say that the crypto industry is that insane as it has been, and I think we're seeing sanity coming into the space and not seeing these extremely large funded projects, which is, in my point of view, not the way to go. You're over-evaluating yourself from the very early beginning, and if you are an investor, you should definitely look at, also in the ICO space, how is this project going to evaluate their own token and evaluate their own model. And I see, at least within the client base we see at Bitcoin Swiss, the sanity has taken in place, and we are seeing problem ICO models and token models where we are in the 10, 20 millions, 30 millions, and for me personally, that's the max we can go to. But I think it's the guidelines we saw lately from FINMA is very positive, because also when we're dealing with such a new unregulated space, we are seeing that the actors, which is unavoidable, the financial institution, the banks, etc., they are afraid or hesitant to go into help and assist this industry by providing them financial services, providing them bank accounts, simply because they don't know where they're standing on the regulatory basis. Right. So getting more clear regulation is a positive thing. Yes, it's going to make life harder and more tough than it has been. It's not going to be the Wild West anymore, but I think that's the most healthiest thing, and if Switzerland can be the frontier in that in that regulation and development of regulation, I think that we're at least going to see the European countries to align themselves pretty much with what we're seeing in Switzerland.
Very good points. Thank you very much. Marc, you want to bring in some other aspects?
Seems we go
here?
One by one. I think
we don't have to.
one reason why
you can fight actually here.
Yeah, exactly. So go ahead. No, I think one reason is that I mean, Switzerland itself is the most decentralized country, right? I mean, that's perhaps one of the reasons why this whole blockchain industry is so close to the region here. And there are other countries. When you go to China, I mean, as long as they control it, they're also open for decentralized solutions. The difference is that perhaps it's a different understanding. But I think that's a big part of it. I mean, if you have a liberal, let's say the government is not mainly chasing the tax dollar and the entrepreneur, but it's really a innovative friendly ground. I mean, that's the base of all these crypto related businesses, and I think there's a certain reason why you have smaller countries being ahead of the curve, because at the end they're just understanding better how you can be the base of a decentralized society. So I think it will be very interesting. Also the whole conflict Russia-US. I mean, Russia is extremely crypto friendly. In the US, I would say at the moment, at least from a government perspective, it's different. But now you have the first states moving heavily into the crypto space. So I think, I mean, ultimately the biggest disruption in the crypto and blockchain space will be affecting the government institutions, and that's perhaps one of the reasons why certain governments are not as crypto-friendly as here in Switzerland. So it will be interesting, but technology is always neutral, and technology is not interested in any political views, and that was also the case in the past. So I think we have very exciting times ahead of us, and you can't stop the power of technology.
I would very much agree to that, and pick up your last statement. Technology is neutral and can be used for the better and for, of course, the worse. Maybe we talk a little bit about before we go into the success stories and our vision and future, where we see the dangers today, huge rounds of funding, sometimes insane and no control of use of proceeds, totally discoupled from the traditional venture funding or even IPOs, where you have at least a prospectus where you're forced to be transparent with quarterly reports, in the US 10Ks or 10Qs, which is currently not the case. You just get a bunch of money which you can use, and some of the banks in other countries are actually freezing those accounts or not closing those accounts because they cannot make sure that money laundering is not involved. Talking about the exchange between fiat currency and crypto situations, how is that in Russia these days, and where do you see benefits?
I'll agree what's been said before.
Yeah, absolutely.
It means to be like the issue needs to be addressed globally, and
Right.
I think the global governments need to come up with some sort of consensus how to regulate. Because from what we see in the field, I don't want to name the companies that do that, but we know some ICO startups. They gather the money and then they, I don't know, go for stuff like private jets or yachts.
Yeah.
And they don't declare on the fiscal statements, you know.
Right.
Or on the other hand, they'll get the money and then they'll pay their salaries in cryptocurrencies.
Okay. And which is not taxable yet.
Exactly. Does the fiscal authorities aware of it? Perhaps not.
Maybe you could pay taxes in Zug already with crypto, no?
To be honest, not yet.
Okay.
But you can pay some expenses in Zug with crypto in the city of Zug. And that's a great thing, in my opinion, that shows how Zug, as the heart of the crypto valley, is thinking. And we did approximately 50 transactions over there. But the 50 transactions are worth around 30 to 40 million in terms of marketing.
Right.
Because everyone came to Zug, CNN, CNBC, everyone, and had a look what is going on there.
Right.
So it's a huge marketing success, and you even couldn't pay to get in all this news. In Ticino, you already can pay the taxes by crypto.
Fantastic, okay.
And companies like Bitcoin Suisse are taking the risk out of it, because that's easy. If you make a direct settlement of the payment and exchange it to fiat, there's no risk for the city, there's no risk for no one. Right. We even did a wine shop together in Zug, and you can buy wine there, and the merchant doesn't take the risk. So, but we are at the level of where you change crypto and fiat. And we talked about regulation, and I think this is one of the most important places. Because this is where money laundering is coming in, and this is always a local business. This, in my opinion, this exchange, and this has to be local regulated. But when the money is into the crypto world, it's very hard to regulate it local. Then it's on the global level, because then it's flexible to move it everywhere, wherever you want. And I'm absolutely with Marc. there are companies, or countries, they have no clue what decentralization means. I mean, I'm a big fan of Dubai. I know people either hate Dubai or love it. I love it. I have been the first time 1998 there, so there was literally nothing. And in my opinion, it's the biggest bet in the world. What they're investing is the biggest bet in the world, and it seems in the moment it works. And they are also betting on blockchain, but on blockchain, using it for getting more innovative and processes in the government. But at the end of the day, they have no clue what blockchain really means in terms of decentralization, because if you're a country like the United Arab Emirates, you will lose control at the end of the day. And also in Russia, probably it's not a super decentralized democratic country. I'm not sure about it, but probably. And I think there is a huge change, and it helps that Switzerland has this decentralization in the DNA, and that's a huge advantage, because we see projects from all over the world. Usually the big projects are coming to us and asking, should we be here or should we be in Singapore? Yeah. And my question then is, what do you want? Reliable, safe, decentralized country, or Singapore? And that's quite easy to talk about. So.
But Ralf, I think you made a very interesting point before we go on, because could not blockchain technology also be used, and I think we heard a little bit about that, to have full transparency, and if you control that blockchain, you have knowledge about every payment, every coffee you pay, or everything else. Today, those data is maybe with different data hosts, like be it Google or Facebook or other people. Is there not a danger that the technology, you said it's neutral, can also be used for more control instead of just more transparency and decentralization?
Probably.
That goes to the whole.
Probably when we have a look what will happen because of the technology in general. We open up our phone today with our face. Yeah? So our phone recognizes our face. That means for me, in 5 years, when you are running around anywhere in the world, you will be recognized. And there will be no chance to be anonymous on the street. Yeah. My personal opinion. Could we stop this? No chance. Because the technology is there. If there's any camera anywhere, you will be totally visible. This has good things and bad things. Good things in terms of control and probably safety. Bad things in terms of control. So on the other side, in the blockchain world, if we go to the Bitcoin blockchain and we add other technology to the Bitcoin blockchain, and say, for example, big data. When someone is trying to store all addresses and connect it with the people, then at the end of the day, we have a super transparent system where everyone knows how much wallets I have, how much wallets you guys have, and what your wealth is. And when we have open blockchains like Bitcoin blockchain, this will happen, for sure. There will be something like a telephone book where the world knows who has what.
Finally, everyone would know how rich Mr. Trump really is, right? Or Mr. Putin.
And that's a fact of technology,
right?
And that's not only good, but I think we can't stop this. Yeah. So we have to think, how could we handle this? And I think there's a US company, I don't know the name, a small one. They say, "Don't be evil." And this "don't be evil" means, hey, when we have this data, we have to find a way that this data is not used in a bad way, and that we get control of the data back to the owners of the data. Yeah. And again, here in Switzerland, we got a good chance to get our data back. In other countries, it could be a little bit more difficult.
There's a wonderful law actually in Estonia, which is the once only law. That means you as a citizen give one of your dates, for example, your birth date, only one time to your government, and then it's their responsibility to handle the data correctly. And the other thing is that owning data, whoever wanted to draw some of your data, so this is fully transparent, all your data is open, but you as the owner of your data know who accesses your data. I think that's very interesting. Now, speaking about that, Dan, I would like to have some of your viewpoints here again on how do you see blockchain maybe changing behavior of people in terms of more transparency, don't be evil. Do you see there's a chance that because of everyone knows everything about everybody, there would be a better world possible?
So I'll just comment and say that there are different types of cryptocurrencies. Some offer more privacy than others.
Right.
Bitcoin specifically is not as anonymous as people think. There are services out there that are able to identify hot wallets of major services. So if you're doing something bad, sending to a darknet market, for example, that's very easily identifiable, where it wasn't as easy 2013 and 2012. Or if you're sending to another exchange, that's also very easily identifiable. What's not as easily identifiable are identity information attached to those addresses. When you're talking about a Bitcoin-to-Bitcoin transaction where there's no central exchange involved, there's no identity information attached to that. However, as soon as you come into an address that's associated with an exchange, a Coinbase address or any number of other exchanges, then that's when the identity information is there. So I'll just point out that the Bitcoin blockchain is becoming more, I would say, transparent over time. Then you have currencies like Monero or Zcash, which nobody can trace. Nobody has any idea how to trace it, and these are really complicated currencies. But again, once you have a Monero or a Zcash address that touches an exchange, then all that anonymity goes away, and that exchange is very easily able to identify you, and those exchanges are obligated, depending on how they operate, to enforce AML, KYC, and work with the government agencies when requested to. So, I don't know. I don't know whether or not it's going to make it a better world or not. What I do know is that there's a lot of institutional money sitting on the sidelines waiting for clear regulation before deploying large amounts of money into this ecosystem. And how that will affect it is, I don't know. And whether or not that is straying away from Satoshi's original vision of a currency for all, concentrating the wealth into a number of Wall Street types and investment firms. I'm not quite sure how he'd feel about that, or she, or they.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's a very interesting aspect. One of the companies I invited here, Enki, has the big vision to actually counter corruption based on blockchain, and I think there's technology merits to it, which really could do it. The dev team is quite strong because they created actually also pretty good privacy back in the 90s, where the encryption methodology we still use today in Bitcoin. But Bogdan, back to you.
Back to Russia.
Back to Russia, of course. And not only Russia. I mean, we have so many projects. But what I wanted to ask you is about your project, actually, because this is an impact project. And I think we heard it on the panel before that the lady from the think tank expressed blockchain has already been used in many NGO organizations to a big extent, helping things to go better. What are you doing with your project?
Well, in our opinion, in our view, Genexi,
yeah,
it's our investment fund based on blockchain technology. We believe that the next race will come in terms of the social impact that blockchain technology, so blockchain startups make. So what we do in Genexi, we look for prospective projects. Mm-hmm. First, we invest our own money, and then if the project is successful and can make like a world a better place,
right,
we put it up for ICO. And then with the funds raised for the ICO, we start to hand out grants in developing countries. And then we reward scientists and researchers in those countries who may not have been heard or may not have been forgotten.
Right.
Most common question, why do you need blockchain? And we will say, First is a track and trace model. So, for example, when there's a very big problem nowadays with the drug counterfeit, especially in developing countries, since there is a lot of corruption. So when the big pharmaceuticals comes in, let's say Bangladesh, where the legislation is really, really lax, you don't know where the product was produced. If it's being produced in the right way, maybe there is some sort of mixture, and then the end customer might not get like treatment. So what we do with the blockchain, we're going to create a track and trace system where it can be seen, and we can track the whole supply chain process, right from the factory up to the end customer. So I think that's the way we can make a world better place. And first we can ensure that there is no drug counterfeit. It's quite ambitious, I got to tell you, but I think we can do it because we believe in ourselves. We've got a business model that's been profitable, it's been worked out, and we're not just being greedy capitalists. We want to make some sort of social impact and then make it worldwide available.
That's a very fantastic project, of course. And
come to our stand, I'll tell you more.
No, but I think that's totally fine because it's a great example, and we want to hear some live examples where the vision could go. For example, I'm invested in a company that does smart city infrastructure management, and we want to deploy it now also on a blockchain because then eventually the assets can actually pay do micropayments to the service provider or whatever has been done to do this fair transition. So maybe we should do it in the city of Zug actually as a start. We have 30 cities already, but none on blockchain yet. So
I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, there's all sorts of projects: fintech, payment systems, banking, crypto card payments, whatever you name them. But in a way, there still needs to be some sort of regulated because the most common consensus there is in the world right now, you start up as a one thing, then you face a regulation, and then suddenly you're becoming a platform for launching another ICO projects. And then when they say, well, but guys, like, you know, there's no regulation, you know, like you can get away with it, and they say, but
abuse that.
They abuse that basically. They say like, the most common answer is like, well, not every single venture capital firm is successful. I'm like,
of course.
Like, are you serious with me right now? You're a moral hazard, mate. But you know, for the fact that you won't be done anything, you don't face any responsibility for your actions. You can get away with that. And they just pop their shoulders and say, that's the world we live in. So that's, without doubt, Nicolai, I agree with you on this one. I think as an issue needs to be addressed globally and needs to be like, I don't know, some sort of framework that be adopted to every single country with slight strays. Some slide from like drifts away from the main framework.
How much impact does the community today have in terms of reputation of projects? So when people are known by you or they come out of your incubator, for example, you kind of vouch for them to be not only legally compliant as much as possible, but also ethically okay and trying to really do what they are supposed to do, right? How do you see that going?
So I think we need to send some sort of signal, some sort of certification, saying that this project has been conducted proper due diligence, the team is successful. I mean, if you look at some projects, they might not be successful. Obviously, there are some sad stories as well. I don't know, conduct an ICO and raise like 5-6 Ethereums, really sad, but still. I think the main reason is that people look at their website and they see the people who, I don't know, had degrees in psychology, and then suddenly they're into fintech. It's like, I don't know, you welcome here by flight.
But sometimes you need psychologists in fintech. Come on.
Maybe, but okay, here's another example. You need a surgery. Right. You're on the table, and you said that, you've been told that you're going to be operated by someone who's been observing someone being operated. Or you're in the flight, you know, like, and the pilot says, oh, by the way, my assistant is here, so he's been observing, but he's never had experience before. I think it's the same with finance and wealth management, whatever it is. I think you need a proper professional with the experience and a track record proving that he's managed it right. And then obviously government tape to sell it. There's transparency that people you give them money for, they'll be responsible. They'll be held responsible for every actions and for the way the money is spent, not like on private jets and, I don't know,
so
girls and poles. Exactly, exactly.
That's very important. No, I would definitely agree. How do you see technical limitations still? I mean, when you think now that blockchain is really spanning all over the world, think of numbers of transactions, think of, you know, storage and so on. Do we see any limitations, use of energy through mining? Where are the limits today? What do we need to change in terms of infrastructure, not just on the hotels?
I mean, you just have to go back and see what was the state of the internet 15 or 20 years ago, and I think there we see a lot of parallels. I mean, back then the whole thing looked a little bit different. I guess most people, or some of the people in the audience, they still remember the old modems with the nice sounds when you entered the digital world. Nowadays, literally, it's invisible, so we're online all the time, and the devices are in our pockets. And I think that's something which will happen in the whole blockchain world as well. And especially, I think one moment or one tipping point will be where we don't talk about the technology anymore, and it's really about the use cases.
Right.
And so far, it's all about technology, limitations, what's better than Ethereum, what's the next big thing. So we don't really talk about the use cases, which is fine because we're ahead of the whole adaption moment. But I think the tipping point is when it's not about tech and really more about the inner added value of the technology. And I think this will take some additional time.
Please, Ralf.
I would like to add something to that. In one sentence, do you rate the internet because of the download rate 1994? No, hopefully not. And we're right now anywhere there in the blockchain world. And the other thing is with real use cases. The only guys who are making money in the moment in the blockchain industry, if we see it as a new ecosystem, is the finance industry.
Right.
So, but we have no real use cases who are making money yet. And when you look at the normal economy, normally the finance industry should bring the money to the real use cases. So, and in the moment, we have some examples here, Coinbase, Bitcoin, Suisse, CryptoFinance. Yes, we're really good in financing and in making money out of that. But how many blockchain projects do you know with real revenues in the real world? And I think that's the biggest challenge. In the moment, we got another blockchain bubble. We got a blockchain event bubble. Sitting here. I think there are 10 blockchain summits in Switzerland in these 2 months. And I'm organizing one, by the way, so I'm also guilty. But we got a bubble over there. We're all talking about things. We're talking about the financing thing behind it. But really the use cases, if we are not delivering these use cases in the next 2 or 3 years, we will see people saying, hey, as I said.
That was just a hype.
That's just no substance behind it. And we already have these stories. Hey, this industry is now nearly 10 years old, if you take the white paper of Bitcoin. And what came out in these 10 years beside the financial industry of the blockchain?
And I would actually agree, and we are seeing a hype and we are seeing a bubble, and in my opinion, and that might sound a bit harsh, then the absolute vast majority of all these projects who's doing an ICO, who's raising funds through an ICO, issuing a token, shouldn't do so. There's really no place in the world for the token they're issuing. It has no proper use case. It can easily be forked. It can easily be replaced by Ethereum by simply just using ETH. And simply, I think 99% of these projects, they're going to fail and they're not going to have the mass adoption, because if you as a project today raise funds by issuing a token and are developing a technology from these funds and proceeds which you acquired in this ICO, and your token can be replaced by ETH, why shouldn't I then tomorrow go out and fork whatever you have developed on the blockchain and make it easy available for the masses? Because what these projects don't think about is their tokens are not going to be liquid. It's not going to be easy for the common guy to acquire these tokens. First, this person have to sign up, for example, at Coinbase, acquire ETH, then go out on a decentralized or illiquid exchange, sign up there, purchase these tokens on an illiquid market, then withdraw them, and then access the platform. No, that's not going to work. That's really
It's a little bit like the stock that has no market and no liquidity, which is out there on
exactly.
some exchange.
And I think we're going to see the same crash as the dot-com bubble crash, and we're going to see the very few actors survive, and those are the actors who actually deserves to be there because they have proper use cases, they have proper technologies.
So you prognose there will be a shakeout, and I think that's a very interesting
Hopefully.
and good.
Hopefully.
Thank you for that.
Back to basics. We don't have
Yes.
regulation, so that might be the case
Yeah.
for market manipulations.
Absolutely.
Even on the tokens that are liquid,
Right.
might be giving some speed in terms of
Yeah.
circulation.
Yeah.
So even given the fact that tokens are liquid, there's still some scope for market manipulations.
So that's very interesting, and thank you for that critical note. Also, I think that's super informative, hopefully also for the public. And I would like to use the last 15 minutes to actually open up to the audience and allow for questions. I think you have seen by now that we have a super competent panel here, which can, it's a pleasure discussing with you. And please, go ahead. Please be so kind to identify yourself. Do we have another mic for this gentleman, maybe? It's coming over there. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. When it comes to crypto securities,
Can you please say who you are and which organization you come from?
of course, I'm Vincent Rouche, and I'm the CEO of tokenestate.io, a Geneva-based project.
Yeah.
With the recent clarification from FINMA, do you believe that being able to issue a crypto security will provide a much better way of financing crypto startups than the current models of issuing a utility or cryptocurrency tokens? And do you believe that this will address some of your concerns in regards to the use of funds or the fact that there are check and balances mechanism in place or that the right of the investors are better protected? Thank you.
Marc, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I'm finally just in the process of doing a company where I'm involved, the real IPO, so the traditional one. That's also happening nowadays. And besides that, I'm involved in a few, in a few ICOs. And it's really interesting to see, especially when you see the both worlds colliding at the same moment, that as soon as you see the power and the impact of an ICO, that this will definitely replace and change and disrupt a big part of the existing way how capital markets, IPOs, and all these kind of activities happen. On the other side, I mean, there are certain reasons why it's far more difficult and complex to do an IPO. So I think these regulated security tokens resulting in a, let's say, more regulated ICO definitely makes sense, because there are a few reasons why it's not so easy just to raise money for a company. And I think we will also see far more ICOs not really targeting the retail investor. So this will then disrupt the venture capital and traditional private equity business. But as we just said in the beginning, we're still finding the way how we want to, or how the whole thing evolves. And now first governments realize that perhaps on a long-term perspectives, we will go for ICOs, but they still have to have some part of the good part of the regulation of the traditional world.
I would like to add something, and it fits very good to that what Nicolai said. Most of the tokens you're not needing in the projects. That means also they are not utility tokens. We are talking about the two categories in general in security tokens and utility tokens, and most of the time it's not a utility. So in my opinion, we will see 99% of the projects as security tokens. Then there's a legal framework, and you have to follow this legal framework, and there's a prospect, and there's everything in place. We don't need new laws on that at the end of the day. And I learned about this new financing vehicle, IPO, or what is it? Probably we can elaborate later on it. But I think the ICO topic could also be just a part of the first investments and heading on the end of the day to an IPO. So the name ICO is probably not the most perfect name for that, and that's the reason why the token generating events or token sales or whatever. So it's just another way to finance it. We will see security tokens. Security tokens are clearly regulated, and that's the way it's going forward. And probably real estate is the next big thing, and you are absolutely on the right place. I like your project, by the way.
I very much agree, and I think the majority of all tokens in the future are definitely going to be securities, and the projects are also going to promote them as securities. The only kind of missing link and brick in the puzzle we're missing at the moment is the actual regulated exchanges for these tokens, because before we have a liquid market and an actual regulated exchange offering to people to trade tokenized equity and securities, then we're not going to see the mass adoption, because you can't trade it. It's illiquid. Why should I acquire it as a private investor? And once we see that, I think we're really going to see a boom in the securities, and I see that as a very, very, very positive thing.
Super, thank you very much. Leading over maybe Dan to you. Securities and exchanges, would it be a natural fit for exchanges like London Stock Exchange, Frankfurter Börse also, to involve themselves into ICOs and maybe building up companies to mature into IPO kind of situations? How do you see that maybe in America, if you look at companies that IPO early on OTC and then maybe grow up into NASDAQ or anything else? What would be your opinion there, Dan?
I'm sorry, what's the...
The question is, how do you see the role of exchanges? Are they the natural fit to help ICOs to grow from regulatory perspectives into maybe later on IPOs, what Ralf just said?
Gotcha. So I see, 5 minutes. I see exchanges, the primary role and function that they should provide is liquidity, and that should be it. It should be up to the markets to decide which of the assets listed on exchanges are ripe for IPO or ICO or ripe to go on from there. But exchanges really should focus on providing liquidity in as many jurisdictions as possible. And then once that's done, then the market will take over.
And we are actually seeing a traditional established exchange doing this. We're seeing the Gibraltar Stock Exchange, which just launched the Gibraltar Blockchain Exchange, meaning that we are seeing some jurisdiction being very progressive in this development. Of course, for Gibraltar, the kind of economic gain in percentages of the existing economy is much larger than what it would be in Switzerland or in the States. So I think that's the reason why we're seeing this progressive development from Gibraltar and the launch of the Gibraltar Blockchain Exchange, which I think is something everybody should really keep an eye on and see the development of.
Fantastic. Last question, otherwise I would ask everyone for a final one-sentence statement. There's Ify, please, go ahead. Does anyone? Yeah, the mic is coming, thank you. Is it on? I think it's
Hello?
on. Yeah, you're on.
I'm Effie Pilarino with 2 hats, daily fintech on the content side and Rothbody on the blockchain side. I have a question specifically to Nicolai. I'm quite surprised with your position in ICOs, saying that it is a huge bubble and so on, since you are head of ICOs in brokerage and what I would call an investment banking, if I was to speak, in a traditional world. And I'd like to hear from you how you are positioned in the market and you handle it in your business, this fact. Are you very selective in the deals that you do? Are you educating the market? Are you very much involved in self-regulatory, all these, there's so many initiatives out there. It would be great to hear.
Yeah, so when I'm talking about a bubble, I'm talking about a bubble in these so-called utility tokens, which is not utility tokens, which shouldn't be there at all. When from the side of Bitcoin Swiss, yes, we are extremely selective. We choose less than 1% of the projects which contact us, and we very much look first of all on the token functionality and the use case of the token. Is it actually really needed? As well as looking at the core team. Is there a team behind behind this project with the qualification which we see necessary to fulfill the thing they're promising towards the contributors or investors or whatever we choose to call them, as well as looking at the business plan. Will there be future revenue within this? And that is why I like to consider Bitcoin Swiss as a consumer protecting layer within this industry, meaning that when a person see a project going on our platform and becoming available on our platform, they know these things has been looked into and this due diligence has been made. But yes, I think the utilities tokens are a bubble, which is going to phase out, just like all the internet companies back in the .com bubble. But we are still seeing IPOs today. Marc is involved in one of them, and we're still seeing projects raising funds today. So I'm not saying it's over. We're just going to hopefully seeing these utility tokens go away, in my honest opinion.
Okay, famous final words. Dan, would you like to start? What's the takeaway and what's for the audience to remember from you?
I'd like to just emphasize that there's a lot of noise out there in crypto assets, ICOs, blockchain, and it's often difficult to distinguish the signal from the noise. So when you're looking at crypto assets, if you're thinking about investing in any of these things, it's really important that you take the time to do the due diligence, read the white paper, and you won't understand all of it. And when you don't, go to the communities on Reddit, on the various internet forums, and ask the questions. That's the best thing I should.
Very good. Or ask the experts, huh?
and then question the experts, because really there's not a lot of room for expertise in this industry quite yet.
Very good. Thank you. Bogdan, please.
Well, I can say it's all about people. Before picking a project to invest in, I think you should definitely go and meet the team on site, have a chat in the same way that, I don't know, investment banks and asset managers go and see hedge fund managers and they see what they guys do and then like what they expertise in and what they specialize in before giving them their money. I think it's the same way with the ICO projects.
I use the same rule in my classic investments. Marc.
Yeah, we're in exciting times, but still don't forget that it's all about business case, good entrepreneurs, passionate entrepreneurs. So even if it's an ICO instead of an IPO, you shouldn't forget that it's also about the business behind.
So execution is everything.
It's the same like in the old world. Just because it's on blockchain, it's not more successful, I would say.
Nicolai, thank you.
Very much aligned with what you're saying. Like my single sentence is going to be the question you always need to ask yourself before putting money into a project. Does this project need a token, and can I replace it with something else?
Super.
Basically, those are utility tokens.
Yeah. Ralf.
My last words is, there will be a crash, there will be scandals, there will be big issues, but blockchain is here to stay.
I think that's a fantastic final word also for the audience. A big hand of applause to you guys. Thank you very much.